The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. Thank you. It's true. And these are the best and the finest. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. But we don't know, because we have no protection and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening. And it's got to stop. And it's got to stop fast.
We want to work with you to really recognize the changing climate and what it means to our forests, and actually work together with that science. That science is going to be key, because if we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay, it'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually. He's going to lock down. This guy wants to lock down. He'll listen to the scientists. If I listened totally to the scientists, we would right now have a country that would be in a massive depression. Instead of, we're like a rocket ship. Take a look at the numbers.
So the two myths I'm going to be taking on are sexual harassment is no big deal, and false accusations are a big deal. So one of the things that I often hear when, especially, even after Dr. Cartina's really important explanation of the prevalence and impact of gender harassment, is I still often hear from some of my colleagues, yeah, but can't you just suck it up? And frankly, no, I don't think many of us can. A lot of the research that I've conducted over the last 6 years has been sexual harassment in the sciences. So what I'm sharing with you are survey results from astronomy and planetary science, where we asked women of color, white women, men of color and white men, whether they had ever been made to feel unsafe in their workplace. And 40% of the women of color in our sample said that they felt unsafe, and 27% of the white women. And that means, if you think about your workplaces, right, that close to half of the women of color that you interact with on a daily basis have probably and recently been made to feel unsafe. So at the end of the day, I just want to be very clear when it comes to sexual harassment and its impacts, and how that affects the daily lived experience. Being sexually harassed is not the trauma equivalent of being accused of sexual harassment, as despite the fact that some now Supreme Court justices would have us believe otherwise. It's not the trauma equivalent of being a harasser. And it is not the trauma equivalent of being an administrator who has to deal with these things. You do not get to diminish the suffering of those who have been harassed or harmed in order to make yourselves feel better about your inaction on some of these issues. Now I want to take on one last myth, and that's the myth that false accusations are a really big deal. And I have to admit, this was actually a really illuminating, useful thing for me to do some research on and get some support from Dr. Magley and Dr. Cortina on, because often when I'm asked this question in talks, I just do the big eye roll instead of taking it seriously, which is something that I should, to some extent that I should be doing. So there's this fear, false accusations are going to destroy some shining, amazing man's career, and that we have to make sure that we are protecting ourselves from these potential brutalities of the accused. So I'm not going to say that they don't happen, because false reports happen. Of course they do. But false reports happen in every type of crime. They happen for all sorts of reasons all the time. What I'm curious about, and what I think we all have to think a little bit about, is why is it that we care so much more about the possibility of false accusations around this particular act, right? So how much do we as a culture focus on the false reports from robbery or burglary? And how much effort do we put into questioning the credibility of, say, a robbery victim? We don't ask a robbery victim, yeah, but where were your keys? I mean, was your cell phone in your pocket or were you holding it? And, those are not the things that we ask a robbery victim in order to assess their credibility.
Science is really important for global diplomacy for several reasons. First thing is it's a universal language. I mean, it's not a spoken English language, but the ideas of science are translatable to every culture that's modernized. It's also should be, not always, but it should be in principle a neutral language. That is, it shouldn't be laden with political views or judgments. It's a language of information, and the best way that I think about science is it's a system of rules that keeps us from lying to each other.
But for Capitol Hill police officers, this was a losing battle. Through broken windows and doors they had forced open. And inside the chamber itself, there was chaos. Agents hastily blocking the doors with furniture to keep the protesters out. Officers ready to open fire as a last resort. In the galleries, people took shelter. The great constitutional showdown in Congress had to be suspended. The cost of that rhetoric is increasingly clear. As crowds tonight are still swirling around Congress. And America's long journey as a stable democracy appears to be in genuine doubt.
No violence, man. Jesus. Big man, bring him in. No more wheelchair.
It used to be called...
Sir, stand at the back.
What is now called registered. Used to be just called exciting.
Right now, there's a temporary delay.
That's fair. Super interested in talking to you, first of all, but basically we're here to shut down an event that is promoting the patriarchy.
In our line. You're doing it really well. Good job.
Very frustrated. I was studying all today, and I took time out of my studies to come here. Two of my friends committed suicide, and I want the peace of understanding why that happened. I wondered why the security was trying to keep me back, and I think it's for my own safety.
They're fucking pigs!
So you believe it's hate speech, right?
It is hate speech.
I've never heard him before. I don't even know what he's talking. I've never heard of him before.
We invite you to educate yourself.
So I just wanted to listen to him.
Go on Google.
I just wanted to see who this guy is and what he's talking about. But now I can't get him.
You should be fucking ashamed of yourself. You're fucking scum. You are fucking scum. Fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating, fucking scum.
Is there someone else I can wait to see what follow me?
Fucking scum.
It's a joke. Impeachment for that? When you have a wonderful meeting or you have a wonderful phone conversation? It was beautiful. It was just a perfect conversation. I think you should ask for VP Pence's conversation because he had a couple of conversations also. I could save you a lot of time. They were all perfect. Mike Pence's conversations, which were, I think, one or two of them, they were perfect. They were all perfect. You take a look at that call, it was perfect. Perfect.